Tonight, a multi-million-dollar shot in the arm for healthcare in Melbourne.
Secret meetings and threats to kill. A 10 News exclusive on the Bali 9.
And the clues that police hope will lead them to the culprit who targeted an ambulance on a Mercy dash.
10 News with Mal Walden and Jennifer Hansen.
Good evening. First tonight, revelations set to rock the football world. St Kilda players have been using caffeine tablets to boost performances in this year's matches. And the Saints say they're not alone, with other AFL clubs thought to be using the stimulant. Rob Waters has been following today's dramatic developments. So, Rob, what can you tell us about these revelations?
Well, good evening, Mel. I can confirm to you that St Kilda coach Grant Thomas has confirmed today that some of his players have been using the stimulant caffeine. Now, up until 2004, caffeine was banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. The Saints' use of the now legal stimulant caffeine is the brainchild of their fitness guru, Chris Jones. He started research during the pre-season and they decided to go ahead with it in round one against the reigning champions, the Brisbane Lions. Now, some players have found them beneficial, others have found that there's some problems when the effects start to wear off, so it's a bit of hit and miss at the moment because there are some massive side effects, but I must stress that caffeine now is legal, but it wasn't up until the end of last year.
Yes, so Rob, why was caffeine banned until this year?
Well, for many years it was considered performance enhancing. Now, scientific researchers are now split on the benefits or otherwise of caffeine, and because of that it was taken off the banned list at the end of 2004. You'll remember that in 1988 there was a massive controversy in Australian sport when the Australian pentathlete Alex Watson was kicked out of the Seoul Olympic Games for having excessive levels of caffeine in his blood. He was given a life ban. That was then rescinded to 2 years, but they've had to think about it since those days and caffeine is now legal. So in a sense, the Saints aren't doing anything wrong, but it will cause plenty of debate nonetheless.
Yes, and of course this isn't the first time clubs have pushed medical boundaries to the limit.
No, they've been very keen to push the edge over the years. The clubs, we've had the hypoxicator, we've had Brisbane flying at low levels of altitude, we've had Brisbane also using saline drips in a bid to rehydrate quickly. And now this is another example of the clubs just trying to find that scientific edge to increase the performance of their players. The Saints are using caffeine. We've had that confirmed today. They say that up to 6 other clubs have also begun to trial the use of it during matches.
Thank you, Rob. More on that a little later. Rob Waters reporting live from Moorabbin.
One of Melbourne's busiest medical centres is set for a major facelift thanks to next Tuesday's state budget. 10 News understands that $24 million will be spent upgrading Epping's Northern Hospital.
With patient numbers climbing by thousands every year, Northern Hospital executives have been pushing hard for an urgent expansion.
And we're seeing a decrease in total waiting lists, but that can't last indefinitely when we're facing the sort of population growth and ageing that we are seeing in this region.
Next Tuesday, their wishes will finally be granted. 10 News has learnt $24 million has been earmarked in the budget for new wards.
It's the outer metropolitan fringe that really needs the growth because that's where the population is growing.
The expansion means the hospital can add an extra 64 beds to relieve the pressure.
Health is obviously will take up the majority of the resources in the budget, as always does, and it'll be a clear focus of our government.
The Northern's emergency department is now the city's busiest, with an extraordinary 22% increase in admissions last year alone. The new building is expected to be finished by 2007.
But we've done a lot of pre-planning, master planning of the site, and we know exactly how we're going to construct the facility if the money's made available.
A much-needed funding boost for hospitals and key changes to land tax are set to be the main focus of what could prove to be the most politically crucial budget John Brumby has handed down in his 5 years as Treasurer. The state's ambulance fleet is also expected to get a significant upgrade.
People assess this budget closely and make sure that we're getting a real increase in services and a real increase in spending.
Gareth Boreham, 10 News.
Police video of the interrogation of the accused Bali 9 drug smugglers has undermined claims that they were duped into carrying heroin. It reveals the threats began in Sydney well before they went to Indonesia.
Confessions of a drug smuggler under interrogation. Martin Stevens tells Bali police of a secret meeting in the Sydney home of Andrew Chan, one of the alleged ringleaders. claiming Chan showed him photos of his family, a threat to force him to join the heroin syndicate.
At Andrew's Chan's place. House. Yeah. And in Brisbane or Sydney? Andrew Chan. Andrew Chan was the one who showed you the pictures. But Muran Muscle wasn't there at his place at the time.
He confirms the other suspected ringleader, Muran Sukumaran, was not there. The revelation made as another accused watched on. It gives an insight into how this smuggling operation began in Australia long before it failed in Bali.
10 News understands several other suspects have told of similar meetings and how drug syndicate leaders collected personal information about them to use in a threatening way.
During this interrogation, police try to keep Stevens on side, hand over money, they explain, and they can get him cigarettes.
I'll get you a cigarette. I've got cigarettes, but I'm going to run out. But I still remember your daddy give you some money, and I made a deal with your daddy that he gives some money to water.
Interrogation continued today for some. Michael Chuyuk, though, taken to hospital, complaining of a toothache. He was treated, but the outing also used as an opportunity for a TV interview with a station which has an arrangement with his parents. His father keen to keep out other media.
How's the tooth made, or was it for a media interview?
In Bali, Jeremy Pudney, 10 News.
And Jeremy joins us now live via video phone from Bali. Well, Jeremy, what do those revelations in the interrogation video mean for the Bali Nine?
Well, Jen, it shows us several different things about what's happening inside the interrogation rooms. Firstly, that some of the suspects are naming names, the names of those they say who threatened them and also who orchestrated this heroin smuggling operation. But it also shows that the threats in some cases began quite some time ago in Australia, and the suspects had opportunities to go to police there. It wasn't necessarily a case of last-minute threats being made in a foreign country, leaving the suspects with no choice but to go through with this.
And given that information, what role are Australian Federal Police taking in this investigation?
Well, of course, Federal Police have been assisting back in Australia, but also 2 agents arrived here yesterday. They say they're not taking direct part in any of the actual interrogations. They are assisting with the investigation. The lawyers here expect their clients, the suspects, will be interrogated 4 or 5 more times before formal charges are laid. Jen?
Thanks, Jeremy. Jeremy Pudney reporting live via video phone from Bali.
Still in Bali, judges determining Schapelle Corby's fate have only just received a translation of her final bid for freedom. Her lawyers are angry at criticism that she should have spoken to them in Indonesian.
Schapelle Corby's lawyers are under fire for not instructing her to make her final plea in Indonesian or giving the non-English speaking judges a translation. They say her notes show she was scrambling her thoughts minutes before the hearing, making formal translation impossible.
We wanted her to say something from her heart, not say it in English, somebody translate, and she wouldn't know what the translation actually means.
Her emotional delivery at times transcended language barriers.
And I swear, by God is my witness, I did not know the marijuana was in my bag.
Yet one of the judges was seen reading a book on sentencing as she begged for her freedom. The Chief Judge says the Gold Coast woman's trial is no different to the many drug cases he hears. Today he sentenced an African man to life over heroin charges. The defence has accused the prosecution of manipulating evidence and refusing to fingerprint the bags containing the marijuana. And in another counterpunch, her lawyers have attacked the Chief Prosecutor, Mr Wiswan Tanu, for not turning up to court yesterday to hear the defence team's final submissions. What it comes down to, though, is Miss Corby's lawyers haven't been able to show who put the drugs in the bag. Her father has revealed he packed her bags before she left Brisbane and claims there were no drugs inside.
And she's in all the trouble caused there, bloody there, and she didn't have them when she left home.
Mr Corby also claims she hasn't used drugs since her school days.
Oh, she might have bloody had a puff when she was in bloody grade 10 or something, around the back of the schoolyard like kids do, I don't know. She had nothing to do with it.
In Bali, Martine Griffiths, 10 News.
Back home, and police are hunting for a culprit who smashed an ambulance windscreen with a beer bottle. The dangerous act delayed paramedics transporting an emergency patient in Footscray.
A 74-year-old heart attack patient was being taken to the Western Hospital when the ambulance windscreen was shattered by a projectile, initially thought to be a large rock. The paramedic crew believes it came from a car driving in the opposite direction.
More than surprised, absolutely stunned. I mean, it's just something you would never ever fathom happen at all in this day and age.
Leo Duff considered it lucky no one was seriously hurt in the incident and there were no other emergencies at that time of the morning.
It's taken us out of service for a number of hours because we've had to get another vehicle, so it's denied the community of a precious mic unit for several hours.
Police took swabs from the shattered glass and believe the object is in fact a beer stubby, and they hope to trace some broken glass found near the side of the road to the person responsible. The attack cast a shadow over what was to be a happy day for the ambulance service, equipped this morning with the state-of-the-art command centre and response truck.
I just found it astounding that anybody would do such a stupid and cowardly thing.
Ambulance bosses have called for the community to dob in the culprit or culprits.
If people are aware of it, I certainly would like them to come forward and let the police know. I'd also like parents of these people, if they're young, I guess we're assuming they're young, to come forward because these people need to be spoken to.
Paul Kennedy, 10 News.
And now here's Stephen looking ahead to Friday night sport.
Thanks, Mal. Mick Malthouse in no mood to celebrate a unique milestone. A double dose of good news for the Tigers. The Swans facing a ruck crisis after Darren Jolly fails in his bid to have his suspension overturned. And the Lions lose one of their big names for their crucial clash against the Bombers.
And coming up, Top Drop, how a small release is creating a big challenge for Grange lovers. The man shot dead by Dominic Gatto during a violent struggle has been described in court as a fearless psychopath. Andrew Benji Venyman was himself a police suspect in 4 unsolved murders.
Film leaving court just over a year ago, Carl Williams' bodyguard, Andrew Venyman, was dead within hours. The 28-year-old was repeatedly shot by former boxer Dominic Gatto in a passageway at the back of a Carlton restaurant. Prosecutors say it was murder. But Mr. Gatto claims he acted in self-defence while struggling for control of the gun he claims Venyman pulled on him. His lawyer Robert Richter QC today told court the defendant had been fighting for his life, characterising Venyman as a fearless aggressor with an unpredictable explosive temper and a psychopathic murderous propensity. The jury heard Venyman was the principal suspect in 4 unsolved murders, those of Nick Radev 2 years ago, Paul Kalapolitis 6 months before that, and Dino Dibra and Frank Benvenuto, who both died in 2000. Gatto allegedly thought Venyman had killed a close friend of his, Graham Kenneborough, and also wanted to kill him. Mr. Richter said Venyman was carrying the gun when he went to visit the defendant and could have decided on the spur of the moment while at the restaurant to kill Dominic Gatto. The lawyer also claimed the restaurant was an absurd location to execute someone. It was a public place around the corner from a police station and Mr. Gatto's unofficial office. Christopher Still, 10 News.
A sombre memorial service today for the man who shot dead a policeman earlier this week before taking his own life. Mark Bailey's family and friends gathered to remember the 27-year-old, a keen cyclist but a man who'd struggled with life.
He told her of the dreadful events that had occurred. He repeated over and over that he was so sorry. His mum, as mums do, tried to talk him out of taking his life, but Mark knew the seriousness of what he had done.
Bailey killed Senior Constable Tony Clark with the officer's own revolver after being pulled over for a second time last Sunday.
Dole bludgers face losing their welfare payments if they fail to show up for interviews. The federal government may give private job networks tough new powers to punish those they suspect don't want work.
In less than 2 weeks, Peter Costello hands down his 10th budget and the long-term unemployed are in his sights.
Receiving unemployment benefits is a two-way street.
That means tough measures for those suspected of milking the system. They'll be forced to work longer hours under Work for the Dole schemes and face having their welfare payments suspended on the spot if there are no show at job interviews.
I don't think it's a question of a big stick. I think it's a question of mutual obligation. encouraging people to recognise that as society has an obligation to them, they have an obligation to society.
Under the plans, job network providers would decide which job seekers are really job shirkers and should be forced onto the tougher program.
This is another example of the government passing the buck.
Welfare groups have also condemned the move.
It's not about having more sticks, it's about having more carrots. Long-term unemployed people need encouragement, they need training, they need education. That's where the focus should be.
While the government is pushing a hard line with the unemployed, it appears to be softening its stance on restricting Medicare rebates for IVF treatment after facing a fierce backlash from within its own ranks. A leaked letter from Communications Minister Helen Coonan, in which she urges the government to reconsider, revealing the deep divisions within Cabinet.
There have been no announcements made about IVF, and as for budget decisions, well, such decisions as are made by the government will be announced on budget night.
Is that the Health Minister paving the way for a backdown?
There's a lot of speculation going on at the moment. Some of it's well informed, but a lot of it's badly informed. So I won't be adding to it.
Leonie Mellor, 10 News.
The repetitive tune of poker machines is being used to help reform problem gamblers. It's part of a unique therapy program which is having enormous success.
These tunes can be torture. But for many gamblers, the repetitive strain of pokies is enough to get them hooked.
Go to bed with them, you wake up with them, and they trigger that urge to go to the machines.
Mother of three, Sue Pinkerton, poured $60,000 into the pokies over 3 years. She lost her marriage and her self-esteem.
When I get in front of a poker machine, all control goes and I overspend.
But that's behind her now, thanks to a unique form of therapy at Adelaide's Flinders Medical Centre. It aims to reform problem gamblers by overexposing them to tape-recorded pokey tunes. They listen for days on end.
We play the pokey music and people initially get their urge up fairly high, but they can start to see that the urge actually starts to go away.
Over the 12-week program, they're shown images of the more popular games, such as Dolphin Treasure and Black Rhino. They're even encouraged to sit in front of a pokey without spending any money. Eventually, the whole process becomes a bore. Already 700 people have gone through the program. Counsellors say most of them are now able to enter hotels for a drink or dinner without the urge to gamble.
Saved my life, saved my sanity. It got rid of the urges entirely. They are just gone.
Belinda Hagan, 10 News.
To finance now, and a big fall on the market to end the week. The All Ordinaries down 32 points. Commonwealth Bank stocks shed 51 cents. Coles Myer lost 13 and Telstra dropped 9 cents. The Australian dollar is buying 78 US cents, nearly 41 pence, 82 yen and 60 euro cents. Gold is trading at $432 US an ounce and the price of oil has risen 55 US cents. Julia Lee joins us now from CommSec. And Julia, it appears fewer people are borrowing money for houses.
Jan, housing credit growth has slowed down, and after the recent property boom, it's probably a good thing that home loans are growing at a much more sustainable rate. It's also the effect that interest rates have had on both the lending market as well as the housing market. But good news for homeowners, with the latest figures supporting the case for interest rates remaining unchanged.
Well, people are borrowing less for houses, but business is borrowing more.
Lending to the business sector has increased at the fastest pace in a lucky 7 years for March. It's a good sign because it means that businesses are expanding and growing bigger. It's also good for banks and companies that depend on business spending, and the Reserve Bank should also be happy with businesses expanding, housing finance shrinking. It should mean that rates remain unchanged next week.
Thanks, Julia. Julia Lee, live from CommSec.
And those with a bit of money, the launch of the acclaimed 2000 vintage of Penfolds Grange has sparked a fine wine frenzy. This weekend's super premium release is the smallest since the 1960s, and most bottles will never reach the shops.
It's not cheap and it's definitely not easy to get hold of. Most retailers have already pre-sold their share.
The quantity we're getting is just getting less and less every year, and therefore they won't even hit the shelves.
It's going to be a difficult vintage for our consumers to actually purchase at a retail level. There simply won't be as much of it around.
The 2000 Grange, made from 100% Barossa Valley Shiraz grapes, proved a headache for winemakers.
Probably our most difficult vintage since 1974.
What we had to do was search far and wide to find ideal parcels suitable for Penfold Grange, and we did find them, but it was challenging.
As a result, volumes are low to maintain high quality.
To put that into context, it will be 1/4 the size only of the previous vintage, being the 1999.
Well, Grange is one of Australia's flagship wines overseas, but international wine connoisseurs are set to be just as disappointed as local ones.
In essence, there is going to be less Grange available in each market around the globe.
And of course, exclusivity comes at a price.
Close to $450 a bottle, yeah.
Which makes it by far the most expensive bottle in this year's premium range of 6. So how good is it?
Oh, I'm sure it's worth it in the long run, if you're lucky enough to ever hang on to a bottle that long.
We might as well have a crack at one now.
Oh, okay.
And if you can't afford the Grange, you can purchase an empty bottle on eBay and pretend to get tipsy for $26. Jodie Blewett, 10 News.
Still ahead in 10 News, wake up Julio, the quest for Wiggles clones to conquer another continent.
Welcome back. And colourful Whitlam Government Minister Al Grasby has been farewelled at a state funeral in Canberra. Led by his wife and daughter, hundreds of mourners from all sides of politics attended the service. Al Grasby was Immigration Minister for 3 years. He was responsible for widespread reforms in the portfolio and launched ethnic radio and television. His outlandish ties were equally as famous. Mr. Grasby died on Saturday, aged 78, after a long illness.
The prosecution case in the Michael Jackson child abuse trial has stumbled. The star's ex-wife has sided with the defence, claiming the singer was a victim of vultures wanting to make money out of him.
Debbie Rowe delivered another day of surprise testimony, all in Jackson's favour.
If this is the prosecution's bombshell witness, it seems to have exploded in their face. This seems to be a dream witness for the defence.
Instead of building up the case against her ex-husband, she helped tear it down. Rowe told the jury Jackson was being manipulated by business associates. She said at least one of his advisors bragged to her about all the money he'd made off the star.
Opportunistic vultures is what Debbie Rowe called the handlers of Michael Jackson. That almost single-handedly destroys their conspiracy theory.
Prosecutors were relying on her as their star witness, claiming she had been pressured into praising Jackson in a television interview after child sex allegations first surfaced. But she absolutely denied that.
An ex-wife who ought to have a grudge to bear comes forward and essentially endorses the defence theory. It's absolutely stunning.
Rowe broke down when she was asked to describe Jackson in her own words. She said he was a generous person, a good father who was great with kids, and a brilliant businessman who always put other people first.
She said there are different Michaels. There's my Michael. She began to cry, and then there's the Michael everyone else sees, Michael the entertainer.
Fans continue to stand vigil outside the court, chanting Michael is innocent. The prosecution is expected to begin wrapping up its case tomorrow. In the United States, Lisa Goddard-Rolls, 10 News.
A funeral director accused of cremating the wrong body has walked free from court. He now plans to sue the New South Wales Department of Public Prosecutions for his legal costs.
Tears flowing outside court as Rose Davidson and her family come to grips with a decision to allow funeral director Adam Lee to walk free.
Well, I'm very unhappy. I'm very unhappy about it, and we've been through a lot, and both families.
Adam Lee runs Caring Funerals. The Davidson and Jones families took legal action against him after one of his mortuary assistants claimed he wrongly cremated 65-year-old Errol Davidson and buried 100-year-old Daisy Jones in his place. Among the evidence tendered by the former employee was because of the stark contrast in body mass, extra weight, including a large container of water, was placed in Mrs. Jones's coffin. Today, Magistrate Pat O'Shane had a different view, saying there is no evidence which suggests the bodies were switched. After 2 fraud charges relating to bills sent to both families were thrown out, defence lawyer Roland Bonici wasted little time applying for costs against the DPP.
I don't think anybody actually wins in these cases, and it's a very emotional issue, and people die and mistakes happen.
The verdict obviously rankling with prosecutor Mark Thomas. So you had pretty strong words to say outside to the family.
No comment.
The families today resigned to the decision, all but ruling out civil action against Mr. Lee. Frank Coletta, 10 News.
An American birdwatcher has made a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Gene Sparling was enjoying the peace and quiet of an Arkansas swamp when he was buzzed by a large bird.
A large woodpecker flew down into the channel from probably above the treetops. He was flying straight at me.
It turned out to be an ivory-billed woodpecker, not seen in 60 years and until now presumed extinct. Bird experts say it's the equivalent of finding Elvis. And now to our weather expert, Mike Larkin, with a quick check of today's conditions.
Pretty as a picture. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Good evening tonight from the very special Kids Centre in Glenferrie Road, Melbourne, sort of across the road, not from the Town Hall. This weekend and also Monday, there is a wonderful autumn art show. More than 100 pieces of work. You've got beautiful pictures, there's sculptures, and they're all for sale, and the money does help those very special kids. Well, it's been a funny old day today after some overnight rain, around 2 millimetres falling in the city, but closer to 5 and then 10 the further east and northeast you were. And 19 degrees the top, 17 though in many suburbs, and still it is 17 degrees in the city. A cold night tonight. Make sure you rug up around 8 or 9 degrees in the morning, and then again around 18, 19 degrees tomorrow with showers tomorrow night. That forecast in full, magnificent, aren't they, some of these pictures? That'll be at 5:55. I'll see you then.